The grand hall of Valoria Prime stretched higher than any building on Earth. Its walls glowed with strange alien lights, and the air smelled of something sweet and metallic. Ambassador Yuna stood in the center, her simple gray suit looking plain against the colorful robes of the alien council members who sat in a circle around her. She had been waiting for 3 hours. The Valorians like to make visitors wait. It was a power move, something to remind everyone who was in charge. Yuna didn't mind. She had expected it. Finally, the lead counselor spoke. His voice came through a translator device that made it sound hollow and strange. "Human, we have summoned you to discuss a matter of great importance." Yuna bowed slightly. "I am honored to be here. Your species has been expanding through the outer sectors for 30 years now," the counselor continued. "You have established 47 colonies. You have built trade routes. You have acted as if this galaxy belongs to you. We have simply been growing as all species do," Yuna replied calmly. Another counselor stood up. This one was taller, with dark blue skin that seemed to shimmer. "The Valorian hegemony has ruled this galaxy for 12,000 years. We have brought peace and order to 4,000 systems. Your expansion threatens that order." Yuna said nothing. She had learned long ago that silence was often the best response. The first counselor pulled up a holographic display. It showed human space highlighted in green, surrounded by the vast purple territory of the hegemony. "We have decided to offer you terms. You will cease all expansion immediately. You will surrender control of 38 of your 47 colonies to hegemony administration. You will provide yearly tribute of minerals, food, and manufactured goods. You will allow Valorian military garrisons on all your remaining worlds." The terms hung in the air like a bad smell. Yuna took a slow breath. "And if we refuse?" she asked. "Then we will take corrective military action," the counselor said simply. "Your species is young. You do not understand how things work in this galaxy. We are trying to be generous." Yuna looked around the circle of alien faces. Some looked bored. Others looked amused. None of them seemed to think there was any chance she would refuse. "I appreciate the offer," Yuna said carefully, "but on behalf of the Terran Federation and all of humanity, I must decline." The silence that followed was complete. Several counselors looked at each other in confusion. One made a sound like choking. The first counselor leaned forward. "You decline?" he asked. "Yes. You understand what this means?" "I believe I do." Another counselor started laughing. It was a harsh barking sound. "The human thinks her little colonies can stand against the hegemony." "This is wonderful entertainment." The first counselor held up a hand for silence. "We will give you 1 cycle to reconsider. Speak with your leaders. Think carefully about your choice." "There is nothing to reconsider," Yuna said. "But I thank you for your time." She turned to leave, but a new voice stopped her. This one was deeper, more commanding. A figure stepped out from a side entrance. He was massive, easily 8 feet tall, covered in what looked like natural armor plates. His eyes glowed a dull red. "I am Overlord Thaxaril," he announced, Supreme Commander of all hegemony military forces. "Since you have chosen to be foolish, human, I will make this simple. In 30 days, the Valorian Grand Fleet will arrive at your colony of New Sol. If your species wishes to contest this action, you may bring your fleet to meet us. We will demonstrate what happens to those who defy the hegemony." Yuna met his glowing eyes without flinching. "We will be there," Thaxaril laughed. "Good. I look forward to seeing what your primitive ships can do. It has been too long since we had proper target practice." The message reached Admiral Hyundae-wan 6 hours later. He was in his quarters aboard the flagship Indomitable, reviewing supply reports when the communication came through. He listened to the entire recording without interruption. When it finished, he sat back in his chair and smiled. His second officer, Captain Bo-Ra, noticed the smile when she entered his office a few minutes later. She had seen that smile before. Once at the Battle of Crimson Nebula, where they had been outnumbered 5-1. Once during the Siege of Titan Station, when their supplies had run out and the enemy had demanded surrender. "Sir?" she asked carefully. "You've heard the news?" "I have," Daewon said. He was 52 years old, with gray streaking his black hair and lines around his eyes from years of staring at tactical displays. He had fought in the colony wars, that terrible period when humanity had nearly destroyed itself, fighting over resources and ideology. He had seen things that still gave him nightmares. "The Council wants to know how we should respond," Bo-Ra said. Daewon stood and walked to the window of his quarters. Outside, the stars stretched forever in all directions. Somewhere out there, an alien empire was preparing to teach humanity a lesson. "Open a fleet-wide channel," he said quietly. Bo-Ra did as ordered. A moment later, every ship in the Terran 7th Fleet received his transmission. "This is Admiral Daewon to all vessels. You have all heard about the Valorian ultimatum. In 30 days, they will arrive at New Sol with what they call their Grand Fleet. They expect us to run or surrender." He paused. "We will do neither. All ships are to begin immediate preparation for deployment. Combat protocols are now in effect. And someone get me Dr. Hana from Weapons Development. Tell her it's time to dust off Project Thunderchild." Across the fleet, captains and crew members exchanged looks. Some were nervous. Many were excited. All of them trusted the Admiral. In the engineering sections, technicians began pulling protective covers off equipment that had been stored away for years. Weapons that existed in no official records. Systems that had been developed in secret during the darkest days of the colony wars. On the recreation decks, veteran soldiers started sharing stories with the younger crew members. Stories about what humans could do when pushed. Stories about innovation born from desperation. Stories about enemies who had underestimated humanity before. In the medical bays, doctors began reviewing trauma protocols and ordering extra supplies. They knew what was coming. And in his quarters, Admiral Daewon looked at a photograph he kept on his desk. It showed a younger version of himself standing with his family before the colony wars. His wife and son were both in the picture. Both were gone now, killed when the colony ship Bright Future was destroyed in a battle over Mars. He had fought to prevent more deaths like that. He had helped end the colony wars. He had worked for peace, but he also remembered every lesson those terrible years had taught him, and one lesson stood above all others. Never underestimate an enemy who has nothing left to lose. The Valorians were about to learn that lesson themselves. 30 days until New Sol. 30 days to prepare. 30 days until the galaxy discovered what humanity had become in its fires of war. Daewon's smile never wavered. The Valorian Grand Fleet assembled at the Kresh staging area, a massive military complex that orbited a dead star. Ships arrived every hour, dropping out of faster-than-light travel in flashes of blue light. Within 10 days, over 1,200 warships filled the space around the station. Overlord Thaxril stood on the bridge of his command ship, the Eternal Glory, and watched with satisfaction. The ship was 5 miles long, covered in weapon ports and shield generators. Its crew numbered 15,000. It was the most powerful warship in the known galaxy. "Magnificent," Thaxril said to his second-in-command, War Marshal Drexnor. "When was the last time we assembled such a force?" Drexnor checked his datapad. 3,200 years ago, Overlord. During the pacification of the Krell sectors. And how long did that campaign last? 17 hours. Drexnor paused. "Sir, if I may speak freely?" Thaxril waved a hand. "Go ahead." "We know very little about human military capabilities. Our intelligence reports are incomplete. They are primitives who have been in space for less than 200 years. Thaxril said dismissively. "What is there to know? They have colonies. They have trade ships. They have some basic defensive vessels. This will not be a war, Drexnor. It will be an education." Drexnor wanted to argue but knew better. Instead, he returned to his station and quietly ordered additional reconnaissance missions. Across the fleet, Valorian soldiers prepared for battle. Most had never seen combat. The hegemony had been at peace for so long that war was something from history files. Soldiers trained in simulators and practiced ceremonial formations. They polished their armor and checked their weapons. But few truly understood what they were preparing for. On the lower decks of the Eternal Glory, a young officer named Kreshitar studied tactical reports from the one skirmish that had occurred between Valorian scouts and a human patrol ship. The human vessel had been smaller and should have been easy prey. Instead, it had evaded the Valorian ships for 2 hours before jumping away. The scouts had never even gotten a weapons lock. Kreshitar found that troubling, but when he reported his concerns, his superior officer laughed. "They ran because they were afraid. It means nothing." Meanwhile, in a different part of space, Commander Seok sat in the pilot seat of the Shadowrunner and watched his display screens. The small ship was invisible to Valorian sensors, using stealth technology that humanity had perfected during the colony wars. He had been observing the Valorian fleet assembly for 5 days now. His crew of 12 took careful notes of everything they saw. "Commander, I'm seeing formation pattern Delta 9 again," his tactical officer reported. "That's the 4th time they've used it. They really like their formations," Sayok muttered. He pulled up historical data that human intelligence had gathered. The Valorians used the same battle tactics they had used for thousands of years. Beautiful formations that looked impressive but had no flexibility. Predictable attack patterns. Weapons that required long charge times. "Sir, those ships are powerful," his weapons officer said nervously. "Their firepower is incredible." "Doesn't matter if they can't hit anything," Sayok replied. He opened a secure channel back to the fleet. "Shadowrunner to Admiral Daewon. I've completed my assessment. Sending full tactical analysis now." Several light years away, Admiral Daewon reviewed the data. Captain Bora stood beside him, reading over his shoulder. "They fight like it's still ancient times," she said quietly. "All tradition, no adaptation." "They haven't needed to adapt," Daewon replied. "No one has challenged them in millennia. They've forgotten what real war looks like." He switched to a different display showing the human fleet. 247 ships compared to the Valorians' 1,200. But those 247 ships had been built with hard lessons learned in blood. The flagship Indomitable was joined by vessels like the Damascus, the Churchill, the Guadalcanal, all named after brutal battles from human history. Each ship had been designed by engineers who understood that in real combat, speed mattered more than size. Adaptability mattered more than firepower. Survival mattered more than looking impressive. "How is Dr. Hana coming with the modifications?" Daewon asked. "See for yourself," Bora said, pulling up another display. Dr. Hana appeared on the screen. She was in her 50s with her hair pulled back in a practical bun and grease stains on her lab coat. Behind her, technicians worked on installing new weapon systems. "Admiral," she said with a tired smile, "Project Thunderchild is ahead of schedule. We've completed installations on 60% of the fleet. The rest will be done in 3 days." "Any problems?" "Just the usual. Some captains are nervous about the power requirements. I keep telling them the reactors can handle it, but you know how captains are about their ships." Daewon did know. He had been a ship captain himself once. "Make sure they understand this isn't optional. We need every advantage." "They'll comply," Hana assured him, "especially once they see what these systems can do. Sir, the Valorians have no idea what's coming." "Let's keep it that way." On Earth, news of the impending battle spread quickly. Some people were afraid. Most were not. Humanity had survived too much to be afraid of alien threats. In the military academies, instructors used the situation as a teaching example. "The Valorians think numbers will win," one professor told his students. "But warfare isn't mathematics. It's adaptation. It's innovation. It's the willingness to do what your enemy doesn't expect." In the colonies, people went about their daily lives. New Sol, the colony that would become the battlefield, didn't evacuate. The colonists there were tough people who had chosen to live on the frontier. They trusted their military. They prepared shelters just in case, but mostly continued working. In the shipyards around Jupiter, workers rushed to complete the newest vessel in the fleet. The Horizon's Edge was an experimental ship, designed to test new weapon systems. Its captain, Tae Yang, personally oversaw every installation. "Will it be ready in time?" asked Engineer Wu Jin, who managed the reactor systems. "It has to be," Tae Yang replied. "Admiral Daewon is counting on us." Across human space, pilots reported to their squadrons. So Jin, the Admiral's daughter, led one of the elite fighter groups. She gathered her pilots for a briefing. "Listen up," she said. "The Valorians fly in straight lines. They use energy weapons that require predictable firing solutions. They've never faced opponents who know how to really fly." She grinned. "We're going to teach them about human creativity." Her wingmate, Jiwoo, raised a hand. "Are we really going to use the Crimson Dive maneuver?" "If we get the chance," Sojin confirmed. "I know it's risky, but these aliens have never seen anything like it." The pilots exchanged excited looks. They had trained their entire careers for moments like this. Meanwhile, Medical Captain Mi-sun prepared her hospital ship, the Mercy's Light. Unlike the warships, her vessel had no weapons, but it had the best medical technology humanity could build, and enough space for thousands of patients. "We'll treat anyone who needs help," she told her staff. "Human or alien, that's what we do." Some of her staff looked confused. "Even the enemy?" "Especially the enemy," Mi-sun said firmly. "We're not monsters. We're humans. Remember that." General Yun-ha, who commanded the Marine boarding teams, had a different perspective. She drilled her soldiers relentlessly. "The Valorians think they're superior," she told them. "Let's show them what human determination looks like up close." As the 30 days counted down, both sides prepared. The Valorians prepared for an easy victory, a demonstration of power against primitives who didn't know their place. Humanity prepared for war, and Admiral Daewon sat in his quarters knowing what was coming. He had been in enough battles to understand that people would die, good people on both sides. It didn't matter that his side would probably win. Death was death, and he would carry those souls with him forever. But he also knew that if humanity backed down now, the Valorians would never respect them, would never see them as equals, would always try to dominate them. Sometimes peace required strength. Sometimes mercy required victory first. 5 days until the fleet departed. 25 days until New Sol. 25 days until the galaxy learned what humanity had become. The countdown continued. The Valorian Grand Fleet arrived at New Sol exactly on schedule. 1,200 warships dropped out of faster than light, travel in a perfect formation that stretched across thousands of miles of space. It was meant to be impressive, and it was. On the surface of New Sol, colonists watched from their shelters. The alien ships appeared as bright stars in the sky, visible even in daylight. Overlord Thaxril stood on the bridge of the eternal glory and smiled. Ahead of him, he could see the human colony on the planet below. Around the planet, scattered like insects, were the human ships. He counted them twice to make sure. 247 vessels against his 1,200. The mathematics was simple. "Open a channel to the humans," he ordered. A moment later, his message broadcast across all frequencies. "Human forces, this is Overlord Thaxril of the Valorian hegemony. You are outnumbered 5-1. Your weapons are primitive. Your ships are small. Surrender now and we shall be merciful. You have 1 standard hour to comply." On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Daewon listened to the ultimatum. His crew looked at him, waiting for orders. "Response, sir?" asked the communications officer. "Keep it simple," Daewon said. Message reads, "Negative. We decline." The message was sent. 3 words in English. Thaxril stared at the translation in disbelief. "They refuse?" he said. "After seeing our fleet?" War Marshal Drexnor felt a cold sensation in his chest. Something was wrong. An enemy didn't refuse surrender against such odds unless they had reason to believe they could win. "Sir, perhaps we should be cautious," he began. "Cautious?" Thaxril roared. "Against these primitives? No. Vanguard forces, advance. Show them the price of defiance." 300 Valorian warships broke formation and moved forward. They arranged themselves in the traditional battle wedge formation, a tactic that had served the hegemony for thousands of years. Their shields powered up, glowing with energy. Their weapons charged with a deep humming sound that resonated through space. The human fleet scattered. To the Valorians, it looked like panic. The enemy ships broke apart in all directions. No formation, no coordination. Sub-Overlord Kreshtar, who commanded the vanguard, laughed. "They flee already. This will be over, in minutes." But on the human vessels, the scatter was perfectly coordinated. Each ship knew exactly where to go. They had practiced this maneuver hundreds of times. The Valorian vanguard fired their first volley. Massive plasma bolts erupted from their weapons, each one powerful enough to destroy a city. They lit up space, like miniature suns, tracking toward where the human ships had been. Not a single shot connected. The human vessels moved with impossible precision. their combat AI predicting the plasma trajectory and adjusting position before the weapons even fired. Ships that had seemed scattered were actually in perfect position to avoid the attack. "What?" Kreshitar started to say, but then the humans returned fire. It started with railguns, magnetically accelerated projectiles moving at 80% the speed of light. The Valorian shields, designed to stop energy weapons, barely slowed them down. The first volley punched through 3 Valorian ships like paper, then came the missiles. Smart missiles with their own AI guidance systems, able to dodge point defense fire and adapt to countermeasures. They swarmed the Valorian formation like angry insects. Then came the directed energy weapons, focused beams that cut through shields by cycling frequencies faster than the defensive systems could adjust. In the first 60 seconds of combat, the Valorians lost 19 ships. "The humans lost none. Impossible," Kreshtar shouted. "All ships, return fire!" "Concentrate on..." Another railgun volley struck his ship. The bridge shook violently. Alarms blared. Half his tactical displays went dark. Across the vanguard, chaos spread. The Valorians tried to maintain formation, but the humans wouldn't cooperate. Human ships appeared from unexpected angles, fired, and disappeared. They moved in groups of 3 or 4, coordinating their attacks with machine precision. The Horizon's Edge, Captain Tae Yang's experimental vessel, revealed what it could do. The ship deployed hunter-killer drones that were too small and too fast for Valorian sensors to track effectively. Each drone carried explosives that could cripple a ship's engines. Within minutes, a dozen Valorian vessels were dead in space. The Horizon's Edge also fired its particle beam weapons, technology that the Valorians had never encountered. The beams ignored conventional shielding entirely, cooking electronics and killing crews without even damaging the hull. "This is Sub-Overlord Kreshitar to eternal glory," the Vanguard commander shouted into his communicator. "We need reinforcements. They're not primitives. They're..." A missile strike hit his ship's bridge. The transmission cut off. The command vessel listed to one side, trailing atmosphere and debris. High above the battle, Sojin led her fighter squadron through the chaos. Valorian interceptors came to meet them, piloted by aliens who had trained in simulators but never faced real combat. "Break formation," Sojin ordered. "Free hunt pattern." Her fighters scattered, each pilot becoming an independent hunter. The Valorian interceptors tried to follow their training, maintaining their groups, following their formations. Jiwoo dove toward 3 enemy fighters, moving so fast that his fighter's frame groaned with the stress. At the last possible second, he fired his thrusters and spun 90 degrees, a maneuver called the Crimson Dive. It was something no simulator could properly train for because it required the pilot to ignore every instinct for self-preservation. The 3 Valorian fighters, still trying to track him, crashed into each other. All across the battle space, human pilots performed similar feats. They flew in ways that didn't make sense, that seemed suicidal, that shouldn't work. But they did work because human pilots had been training against each other, against opponents who were creative and unpredictable and desperate. On the Eternal Glory, Overlord Thaxril watched in growing horror as his vanguard disintegrated. In less than 2 hours, 300 ships had been reduced to fewer than 100. And those 100 were retreating in disorder. "How?" he whispered. "How are they doing this?" War Marshal Drexnor had the answer, though he didn't want to say it aloud. The humans fought like beings who had recently survived a war. Their tactics were aggressive but controlled. Their weapons were designed for maximum efficiency rather than maximum show. Their ships prioritized speed and adaptability over size and power. Most importantly, their coordination was perfect. Every human ship seemed to know what every other human ship was doing. They adapted in real time, responding to threats instantly, exploiting weaknesses before the Valorians even knew those weaknesses existed. "Sir," Drexnor said carefully, "we should withdraw. Reassess our approach. Withdraw." Thaxril turned to him, eyes blazing. "We have 900 ships remaining. They cannot defeat us." "Sir, they just destroyed or disabled 300 of our vessels without losing a single ship of their own. That just means we weren't prepared. We didn't take them seriously." Thaxril slammed his fist on the console. "All remaining forces, advance. Full assault. Crush them!" Drexnor wanted to argue but knew it was useless. He watched as the remaining 900 ships prepared to advance. Maybe sheer numbers would be enough. Maybe overwhelming force could compensate for superior tactics. But as he looked at the tactical displays showing how efficiently the humans had dismantled the vanguard, he doubted it. On the Indomitable, Admiral Daewon watched the Valorian fleet preparing for their main assault. Engineer Wu Jin had pushed the reactors to 120% capacity, allowing the flagship to fire at rates that shouldn't be possible. Captain Bo-Ra stood beside the Admiral. "They're coming with everything they have." "Good," Daewon said quietly.
"Let them come."
"Fall back to the Arcturus belt. Let's show them what we've really prepared." The human fleet began moving, pulling back toward a nearby asteroid field. To the Valorians, it looked like a retreat. It wasn't. General Yunha's Marines prepared their boarding equipment. Medical Captain Misun's hospital ships moved to their positions. Fighter pilots checked their ammunition counts and fuel levels. The real battle was about to begin, and somewhere in the back of his mind, Admiral Daewon remembered his wife and son, lost in the colony wars. He remembered all the humans who had died learning the lessons he was about to teach these aliens. "This is for everyone we lost," he whispered. Then louder, "All ships, battle stations. Show them what humanity can do." The Arcturus belt looked like any other asteroid field from a distance. Thousands of rocks floating in space, ranging from pebble-sized to mountain-sized. Dense enough to make navigation tricky but not impossible. The Valorian fleet entered it confidently, chasing the retreating human ships. "They're trapped," Overlord Thaxril announced. "The asteroids will slow them down. We'll corner them and finish this." War Marshal Drexnor studied his sensors. Something felt wrong. The human retreat had been too orderly, too calm, like they wanted to be followed. "Sir, recommend we proceed with caution," he said. "This could be a trap?" Thaxril laughed. "With what? We've destroyed their defensive stations. Their fleet is scattered. What trap could they possibly spring?" The answer came 30 seconds later. The asteroids weren't asteroids. Or rather, they weren't just asteroids. Over the past 3 weeks, human engineers had been very busy. They had hollowed out hundreds of the larger rocks and filled them with weapons. They had covered missile pods with rock dust to make them invisible to sensors. They had positioned automated railgun platforms to look like natural debris. The Arcturus belt had become the largest minefield in human history. The traps sprang all at once. Missiles erupted from every direction. Not dozens, not hundreds, thousands. They streaked through the asteroid field like a swarm of angry hornets, each one guided by its own AI, each one able to think and adapt. Railgun platforms that had been silent and cold suddenly activated, their magnetic coils warming up and firing in less than 2 seconds. Projectiles moving at incredible speed punched through the Valorian formation. The asteroids themselves started moving. What the Valorians had thought were stable rocks were actually mobile platforms with hidden engines. They shifted position, blocking escape routes, creating choke points, herding the Valorian fleet into kill zones. "Evasive action," Drexril shouted, but it was too late. The first wave of missiles struck the Valorian fleet. Shields flared and died. Ships exploded. Vessels crashed into asteroids trying to avoid the attacks. The human fleet, which had seemed scattered and disorganized, revealed its true nature. The ships hadn't been retreating randomly. They had been moving to specific positions, creating overlapping fields of fire, setting up perfect ambush points. Now they struck. The Indomitable emerged from behind a large asteroid, its weapons blazing. Engineer Wu Jin had done the impossible, pushing the ship's reactors to 130% capacity. The flagship fired continuously, its railguns launching projectile after projectile, its laser batteries cutting through enemy vessels, its missile tubes launching guided death. "Reactor temperature critical," an engineering tech shouted. "I know," Wu Jin shouted back. "Just 30 more seconds." "The Admiral needs 30 more seconds." He got them. The Indomitable carved through 6 Valorian ships before pulling back to let the reactors cool. By then, other human ships had taken over the assault. Captain Tae Yang's Horizon's Edge demonstrated its full capabilities. The experimental ship released a new wave of hunter-killer drones, these ones equipped with EMP generators. They swarmed around Valorian vessels, disabling their electronics without destroying them. Dozens of enemy ships went dark, dead in space but intact. "Medical teams, those disabled ships will have survivors." Tae Yang reported to Captain Misun. "Prepare to receive casualties." Misun acknowledged and directed her hospital ship, Mercy's Light, toward the disabled vessels. Her crew prepared to receive patients, human and alien alike. Some of the Valorian ships still had power, tried to fight back. They fired at the human vessels, but it was like trying to swat flies with a sledgehammer. The humans were too fast, too coordinated. Every time a Valorian weapons system locked onto a target, the target was already gone. So Jin's fighter squadron hunted through the asteroid field with deadly efficiency. They had trained in fields like this back home. They knew how to use the cover, how to appear from unexpected angles, how to strike and fade before the enemy could respond. Target locked, Jiwoo called out. Taking the shot, his missiles struck a Valorian cruiser's engines, crippling it without destroying it. This was a new order from Admiral Daewon. Disable when possible, destroy only when necessary. Jiwoo didn't understand the order at first. Why show mercy to an enemy who had threatened their homes? But orders were orders. And he trusted the Admiral. General Yunha's Marines boarded several of the disabled Valorian ships. The alien crews, expecting to be executed or imprisoned, instead found human soldiers offering medical assistance. Marines who had been trained to kill now worked alongside combat medics to save alien lives. On one disabled cruiser, Yunha herself found a group of wounded Valorian soldiers trapped in a collapsed section. Her team spent an hour cutting through debris to free them. Why? One of the wounded aliens asked through a translator. Why help us? We came to conquer you. Yunha paused while bandaging the alien's injured arm. Because we're human. This is what we do. The alien didn't understand, but he accepted the help. On the Eternal Glory, Overlord Thaxril watched his fleet fall apart. In less than 3 hours, 900 ships had been reduced to fewer than 400, and most of those 400 were damaged. Impossible, he kept saying. Impossible. They're primitives. They've only been in space for 200 years. How? War Marshal Drexnor finally had enough. Because they remember how to fight. Because they've been in a war recently and learned from it. Because we've been at peace so long we've forgotten what real combat looks like. Thaxril turned to him, eyes blazing. You dare? Yes, I dare, Drexnor shouted back. I dare because I'm watching our soldiers die for your pride. We need to withdraw. We need to regroup. We need to admit that we underestimated them. Never, I will not. An alarm cut him off. The flagship was under attack. Multiple human ships had targeted the Eternal Glory specifically. Railgun rounds hammered the shields. Missiles swarmed around the vessel. Laser fire cut at the armor. Shields at 40%. A technician reported. Engines hit. We're losing power. Fire Deck 3 is destroyed. Drexnor made a decision. He opened a priority channel. All ships, this is War Marshal Drexnor. Cease fire. Cease all offensive operations. Prepare to receive surrender terms. What are you doing? Thaxril demanded. Saving lives, Drexnor replied. He switched to a different channel, one the humans had left open for negotiations. Human Commander, this is War Marshal Drexnor of the Valorian Hegemony. I request parley. We wish to discuss terms. On the Indomitable, Admiral Daewon received the message. Captain Bora looked at him questioningly. Sir, do we accept? Daewon thought about it. He could destroy the entire Valorian fleet. The battle was won. But how many more would die? Human and alien both? Cease fire, he ordered. All ships hold position. Maintain readiness, but do not engage unless fired upon. He opened a channel to Drexnor. War Marshal, I accept your request for parley. We will meet on the neutral station in Sector 47. Come unarmed. Understood. Thank you. Thaxril stared at Drexnor in fury. You have no authority to surrender. I have the authority to stop our people from dying uselessly, Drexnor replied. And I'm using it. You can have me executed later if you wish, but first I'm going to meet with the human commander and try to salvage something from this disaster. Around them, the Valorian fleet began powering down weapons. Human ships maintained their positions, watching carefully, ready to resume fighting if needed. But the battle was over. In the asteroid field, Medical Captain Misun's ships moved among the disabled and damaged vessels, offering aid to anyone who needed it. Human crew worked alongside hastily recruited Valorian medics, saving lives without asking which side they belonged to. So Jin landed her fighter on the Indomitable and went directly to her father's office. She found him standing at the window looking out at the battlefield. We won, she said quietly. We survived, he corrected. Now comes the hard part. What's that? Teaching them that we're not their enemy. Not unless they make us one. Outside, the stars shone indifferently on the thousands of ships, human and alien, floating in the silence of space. The battle had ended, but the real challenge was just beginning. The neutral station was old, built by a species that no longer existed. It orbited a gas giant in unclaimed space maintained by automated systems. Admiral Day One arrived in a small shuttle with only Captain Bora as escort. War Marshal Drexnor came alone. They met in an observation room with windows looking out at the stars. The room was empty except for 2 chairs. Neither man sat at first. Drexnor was tall, even taller than most humans. His natural armor plates made him look dangerous. But his eyes showed exhaustion and something else. Sadness, perhaps. "Thank you for meeting with me," Drexnor said through his translator. "Thank you for requesting it," Day One replied. "You saved lives today, both yours and mine. I should have requested it sooner, before so many died." They stood in silence for a moment. Outside, both fleets maintained their positions, waiting, watching. "I don't understand," Drexnor finally said. "Your ships, your weapons, your tactics. How are you so far ahead of us? You've only been in space for 2 centuries. We've ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. Day One walked to the window. You've had peace for those 12,000 years. We had peace for less than 100. What do you mean? Before we met you, we fought ourselves, Day One explained. 50 years ago, humanity nearly destroyed itself. We call it the Colony Wars. It lasted 8 years. Billions died. Entire colonies were wiped out. Ships crashed into planets. Orbital stations fell from the sky. We developed weapons to kill each other more efficiently. We learned tactics to fight enemies who thought like us, who adapted like us, who were as desperate as us. He turned to face Drexnor. My wife and son died in those wars. So did Captain Bora's entire family. Most of my senior officers lost someone. We learned what war really costs. Drexnor listened, his expression troubled. You see our weapons as advanced, Day One continued. They're not. They're just designed by people who remember what it means to face extinction. You see our tactics as innovative. They're not. They're refined by beings who fought opponents just as smart and creative as they were. You've been at peace so long you forgot what real combat looks like. We can't forget. The scars are too recent, but your mercy, Drexnor said. Your medical ships treating our wounded. Your soldiers helping our injured crews. That doesn't match your weapons. Day One smiled sadly. That's exactly the point. The colony wars taught us 2 lessons. First, that we can be incredibly dangerous when we need to be. Second, that mercy and strength aren't opposites. The strongest thing we ever did was stop fighting ourselves. The bravest thing we ever did was forgive. He gestured to the space outside. We could have destroyed your entire fleet, killed everyone. But what would that teach you? That we're monsters? That we're conquerors? No. We wanted to teach you that we're capable of defending ourselves, but we're also capable of choosing peace. Drexnor sat down heavily in one of the chairs. You're not primitives at all, are you? We're exactly as primitive as you, Day One said. We just remember it more clearly. The message from the battlefield reached Overlord Thaxril an hour later. He was in his quarters, under guard, waiting to see what Drexnor would negotiate. Instead, he received reports from across the fleet. Human ships weren't destroying disabled Valorian vessels. They were protecting them. Human medical teams were treating Valorian wounded. Human engineers were helping repair damaged Valorian ships so they could make it home. Thaxril didn't understand. By all the rules of war he knew, the humans should be demanding surrender, taking prisoners, claiming victory. Instead, they were helping their enemies. He pulled up a video feed from one of the disabled cruisers. He watched as a human marine, still in combat armor, helped carry a wounded Valorian soldier to a medical bay. The human was gentle, careful not to cause more pain. Why? Thaxril whispered to the empty room.
Why show us mercy when we showed you none?
A communication came through. It was Admiral Day One. Overlord Thaxril, the human said. War Marshal Drexnor and I have reached an agreement. Your fleet will be allowed to return home. We will provide assistance to your damaged ships. Your wounded will receive treatment. In exchange, you will report to your council what happened here. And then? Thaxril asked bitterly. You'll invade? Conquer us? No, Day One replied. Then we'll wait. When your council is ready to talk as equals rather than rulers, we'll be here. The transmission ended. Thaxril sat in his quarters, surrounded by the ruins of his pride, trying to understand what had just happened. 3 months later, Ambassador Una stood once again in the grand hall of Valoria Prime. But this time she wasn't alone. Admiral Day-Wan stood beside her. So did War Marshal Drexner, who now represented the Valorian military. The council looked very different than before. Some of the old counselors were gone, replaced by younger members who had actually studied what happened at New Sol. Overlord Thaxaril was not present. He had been removed from command and forced to retire. The lead counselor spoke. Ambassador Una, Admiral Day-Wan, we have reviewed the events at New Sol extensively. We have also reviewed the reports of your mercy toward our defeated forces. We were wrong. It was the first time in thousands of years that the Valorian Council had admitted being wrong. We treated you as primitives, the counselor continued. We underestimated you. We threatened you. And when you defeated us, you showed us what true civilization looks like. Ambassador Una bowed slightly. We don't claim to be perfect. Our own history is full of mistakes, but we learned from them. We hope you can learn from this as well. We propose a new agreement, another counselor said. Not one of dominance and submission. One of mutual respect, trade, shared knowledge, alliance. Admiral Day-Wan stepped forward. We accept. But understand this. If you ever threaten human worlds again, the outcome will be the same. We will defend ourselves. We will win, but we will still show mercy. That's who we are. We understand, the counselor said, and we respect it. The treaty was signed that day. The Terran Federation and the Valorian hegemony became partners instead of enemies. Trade routes opened. Cultural exchanges began. Valorian students studied human history, trying to understand how such a young species had become so capable. Human scientists worked with Valorian researchers, sharing knowledge. 6 months after the treaty, Admiral Day-Wan retired. He had earned it. He returned to Earth and bought a small house near the ocean. His daughter So-Jin visited often. One evening, they sat on the porch watching the sunset. In the sky, they could see ships coming and going. Human ships, Valorian ships, others too. The galaxy was opening up to humanity. Dad, So-Jin asked, do you think they'll really change? The Valorians? Day-Wan thought about it. I think they already have. They've learned that strength alone isn't enough. That mercy matters. That peace is a choice, not just the absence of war. Because of us? Because of everyone who died in the colony wars, he corrected gently. They paid the price so we could learn the lessons. We just shared those lessons with the galaxy. So-Jin leaned against her father's shoulder. Was it worth it? Everything we went through? The colony wars should never have happened, Day-Wan said quietly. All that death and pain was our failure. But yes, those terrible lessons helped us survive when the Valorians challenged us. And more importantly, they taught us that strength without wisdom is just tyranny. We could have destroyed the hegemony. We chose not to. That's the difference between power and honor. They sat in comfortable silence, watching Earth turn beneath them. Somewhere out in the galaxy, new species watched humanity with curiosity and respect. Some with caution, some with hope. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, not as conquerors, not as victims, as equals who understood both the necessity of strength and the wisdom of mercy. The galaxy would never be the same. And that evening, as Admiral Hyun Day-Wan sat with his daughter watching the sunset, he allowed himself to hope that all those who had died to teach humanity its lessons hadn't died in vain. Their sacrifice had made humanity strong. Their memory kept humanity humble. It was a good balance to have. The stars shone above, full of possibility, full of challenge, full of hope. Humanity was ready for whatever came next.